Olá, boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Bem-vinda.
Obrigada, Rita. Rita, será que amanhã podemos falar, então?
Boa tarde.
Olá.
Bem-vindos. Olá, boa tarde.
Bom ver caras conhecidas. Muito bem.
Isso, com pontualidade britânica.
Está tudo bem, Rita?
Tudo. Vamos aqui a dar entrada aqui. Também chove para os vossos lados?
Mais ou menos. Já está melhor agora.
É.
Já está mais solzinho.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet. Aqui. Hoje já apanhei chuviscos. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Paolo. How are you doing?
I'm very well, and you?
Good.
Good.
Busy days.
Thought you were on holidays.
I was last week,
Okay.
just before the Easter.
And I'm thinking to start a few words in explaining how will be this meeting in Portuguese, and then we go ahead in English. Okay.
Sure, no problem.
Just wait just a more few minutes, and but yeah, we're just in time.
1 past 3, so Everyone is being quite punctual, I would say.
Yeah.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde, bem-vinda.
Olá, boa tarde.
Boa tarde. Just more 2-3 minutes, please, and we will start. We are almost.
Boa tarde a todos.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Isto é um grupo super pontual, uma coisa fantástica.
Saudade. Bom dia não, boa tarde a todos.
Boa tarde, boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Bem, nós estamos já um número considerável de participantes. Eu sugeria começarmos já aqui então este nosso encontro e pronto, e depois também à medida que forem entrando também outros colegas, vamos conversando. E deixo também este lembrete que depois toda esta nossa conversa vai ficar gravada e depois posteriormente tem então esta possibilidade também de aceder aqui à gravação do nosso encontro. Eu sem mais demoras começaria por vos dar as boas-vindas. Muito obrigada, é um prazer enorme contar aqui com a vossa presença e com a forte adesão da vossa parte. Este é um espaço, como apresentado, portanto, o Fórum da Sustentabilidade pretende ser um espaço de partilha e de troca de ideias e de experiências, portanto, que seja um espaço muito, muito prático, muito informal e muito participado, de forma que seja, no fundo, aqui um ponto de encontro, ora virtual, ora futuramente até algumas vezes também de forma presencial, mas que no fundo que nos ajude aqui a refletir, a partilhar os caminhos que temos vindo a traçar sempre nesta área da sustentabilidade, aprender também com quem já tem também uma outra experiência, portanto, refletir sobre aquilo que fazemos, as nossas práticas diárias e as práticas para o futuro. Aproveitando também aqui a peleia deste processo de certificação da Sustur, que está, portanto, temos aqui então este projeto de aproveitar também e colocar e direcionar estas questões para as questões que acabam por ser colocadas e que nos são colocadas quando estamos a fazer este caminho da certificação da Travelife, e portanto no fundo a ideia é conjugar também esses pontos, e daí este nosso primeiro ponto dedicado à área do alojamento, sempre sob a perspectiva das agências de viagem e dos operadores turísticos, e portanto no fundo fazer aqui esta conjugação entre aquilo com que somos deparados quando estamos a preencher este processo da certificação, e em simultâneo também partilhar aqui experiências com aquilo que já fazemos e refletir em conjunto de que forma é que poderemos trabalhar melhor no futuro neste domínio. Por isso mesmo também, portanto, estes encontros têm uma periodicidade que vamos tentar que sejam o mais regular possível. Neste primeiro encontro temos aqui, pronto, muito dedicado aqui então a esta parte do alojamento. Na próxima semana, já no próximo dia 20, temos já um outro encontro marcado, desta vez dedicado à área do carbono e portanto à pegada do carbono. Mas, por exemplo, na próxima semana ele terá de ser feito durante a manhã, porque o nosso convidado vive no Nepal e, portanto, para conseguirmos conciliar aqui os horários, portanto, iremos fazê-lo de manhã. Entretanto, depois também seguirá esta informação mais detalhada. E, portanto, aqui a ideia deste nosso encontro, mesmo de hoje, é que vamos ter aqui, contamos com a participação. Temos aqui a nossa convidada especial, Anne de Jong, que criou o Good Institute, portanto, que é um espaço muito vocacionado para a formação nesta área da sustentabilidade, e que é também, em simultâneo, coach e auditora da Travelife. Portanto, no fundo, tem aqui todo este know-how e pode dar-nos aqui esta experiência para esta perspectiva deste campo e deste capítulo específico vocacionado para o alojamento. Mas, portanto, mesmo hoje a ideia, depois, posteriormente, agora iremos também aqui ouvir a Anne, mas a ideia é que podem ir colocando as vossas questões no chat. Teremos também depois aqui a oportunidade, depois da apresentação da Anne, de fazer aqui, podem colocar questões diretamente ou fazermos aqui algumas reflexões. O objetivo é que seja mesmo um espaço informal e, portanto, com a participação de todos, de forma a que consigamos sair ao final desta reunião de uma forma muito mais enriquecida, não só esclarecida, mas também com novas perspectivas e novos pontos de vista. Fazer-vos então aqui uma breve apresentação da Anne, que é a nossa convidada especial para o tema de hoje. A Anne é uma consultora de turismo sustentável dos Países Baixos e é cofundadora então do Good Tourism Institute, que é uma plataforma de aprendizagem online para os operadores turísticos se conseguirem tornar melhor nos negócios e de forma mais sustentável e bem-sucedidos ao longo do tempo. No seu trabalho como consultora, ela apoia, portanto, o Instituto apoia os operadores turísticos e os destinos a tornarem-se mais resilientes e a criar um impacto positivo, portanto, nas pessoas, no planeta e também na área financeira das empresas, não é? Ela também trabalha, então, como freelancer na área da certificação da Travelife para operadores turísticos e, portanto, trabalha como coach e como auditora. Nós temos também uma parceria, portanto, o Instituto tem tem alguns cursos, algumas formações que são gratuitas e outras que são pagas, e o Instituto tem também uma parceria então connosco, com o Fórum da Sustentabilidade, em que depois mais à frente a Anne irá também falar disso, mas que podem aceder também a essas formações com um código, com um desconto especial para os nossos membros. Sem mais demoras, então, iria passar aqui agora para esta nossa conversa em inglês, então, com a Anne. Mesmo no chat, estejam à vontade, se se sentirem mais confortáveis, podem colocar as questões em português, se não podem ir colocando também em inglês, e que depois acaba também pronto, acabaríamos também por falar com a Ana. E pronto, deixar-vos aqui também esta primeira nota, que pronto, a Ana vai acabar por fazer também aqui esta primeira introdução daquilo que é o Good Tourism Institute, portanto, para perceberem aqui um bocadinho melhor também como é que funciona. Passaria aqui então, Anne.
Yes.
Yes. Hello. Sorry for the introduction in Portuguese. I think
No
it
worries.
was very, but quickly I'm explaining not only what you're doing, but also with the Good Tourism Institute. But you are the best person to introduce yourself and to introduce not only your work and the institute, but also the main questions and the main matters that we are talking about today, about the accommodation by the tourism. Now I will go to pass to you all the things that you can show and make your presentation.
Sharing rights.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you for the introduction. Let me share my screen so we can get started. Yes. Yes. So basically, well, you've asked me to do a session on sustainable accommodations and focusing on, well, the selection and relations with accommodations from a travel agent point of view. I think you already introduced me because I think I heard some parts of my bio that I sent you, but
Yeah.
let me do it again. So my name is Anne, I'm from the Netherlands, and I basically work as a sustainable tourism consultant. I'm also a SAS tour coordinator and account manager for Travelife. I think some of you have already met me. I think I've met you in Lisbon last summer during the Travelife trainings. And then I'm also co-owner of the Good Tourism Institute. And basically the Good Tourism Institute is an online learning platform for tour operators to become better in business. So more successful, more sustainable, more authentic, focusing on making profit from positive impact and basically answering the question, what's in it for me if I become more sustainable? We do this via our online library full of articles, guidelines, and best practices. We have a new article every 2 weeks. We have an online YouTube channel with key concept videos where we explain key concepts. We have an online learning platform with 2 courses that help tourism business become better. It's called Become a Better Tour Operator Level 1. And we have an online discussion platform. So any challenges, issues, questions you may have, you want to discuss, well, this is the place to be. My role within Travelife, because this session is going to be half-half, I would say. So we're going to talk about why it's important to work with sustainable accommodations, how to check and select them, but also how to comply with Chapter 6 accommodations in the Travelife criteria. So basically my role within Travelife is that I've been working with Travelife for around 5 years already. I started as Travelife account manager for Africa, but over the years, I also started to focus on Europe quite a lot. So that's also why I'm co-coordinating the EU Sustour program. I'm also coaching the Sustour coaches. So for example, I've been coaching Rita and Paula to coach you. And I'm also coaching like 100+ tour operators that I've taken on myself. Basically, when we talk about sustainable supply chain, as a good tour operator or as a tour operator in business, you're working hard to ensure your travel experiences and trips are organized in a sustainable way. That is your focus. And for your trips to be sustainable, you want to make sure that your entire supply chain works sustainably too. So from transport to local guides to the accommodations that you book for your travelers. The main question is, and there are a lot of tour operators struggling with this, is how do you select sustainable accommodation when you're not on the ground? So on what criteria can you base it and how do you make this selection? Basically, there are three main ways to choose sustainable accommodation. Booking certified accommodations, working with booking.com criteria, or with your own tailored checklist. You want to choose accommodations that fit your itinerary, that appeal to your target group, and also shares the good values that you have as a tourism business. Because basically, if you offer authentic travel experiences in Tanzania, for example, you can't go into your itinerary with the Hilton hotel. Even though they're certified, it doesn't fit the target group or your niche or your product. So it's always important to, even though you're looking at sustainable accommodations, to fit those that are part of your niche. The first one, certified accommodations. It's one of the easiest ways to select sustainable accommodations because they've been verified by a third party. So international schemes such as Biosphere, EarthCheck, Green Globe, Green Key, TourCert, and also Travelife for tour operators, all connected to GSCC, of which you know that they have been checked by a reliable third party as a sustainable hotel. So there's nothing else you have to do, only making sure they have one of the certifications. Do always check if the certification is still valid, because it could be expired or no longer valid for some reasons. So do always check that. But basically, certified accommodations have already proven to comply with a set of criteria regarding sustainability, and they have been awarded for this. So it's a really easy way to do it. The only downside of using an approach of booking only certified accommodations is that there's a large number of local and small scale accommodations that are sustainable but are not certified. So, and reasons for not being certified can range from costs, priorities, local availability of certification schemes, and also time management, of course. So basically the rule is to keep in mind is that all certifications of all certified accommodations are sustainable, but it doesn't mean that all accommodations without certification are not sustainable. So it's always making sure that you just don't cut off accommodations that don't have certification, because there might be a lot of reasons why they can't achieve it. Second is booking.com criteria. So we're still waiting on a lot of other booking platforms and hotel banks to get sustainability filter on, but booking.com has been quite a front runner in how they have integrated this in their booking system. It's not perfect. There is still some confusion about how they selected their level 1, 2, 3 travel sustainable logo. However, it is already a really good step in seeing, okay, what's happening, what is the accommodation doing, and they do make a distinguishment between certifications. So Booking.com has made a great start, and I think you're all aware, I was actually looking for a stay in the Algarve for the summer, so I thought I'll just put that in. So this is a bed and breakfast that has the travel sustainable level 3 logo, rebooking.com. And then if you click on that, you can see that this property has told booking.com they're making large investments and efforts towards sustainability. And for example, in terms of waste, water, energy, and greenhouse gases, destination and community, and nature. There's still a long way to go for this to be truly transparent and reliable, but still it's a really great first step. Especially if you're an agent booking through booking.com, it's a really great step to start looking at it. And then 3, this is kind of my favorite, is your tailored checklist. So you define your own criteria, you create an overview of the accommodations, and basically you ensure that the accommodations that you work with fit your values, your travel experiences, and your target group. So I always recommend to operators and travel agents to create an overview of the accommodations they work with or what they book, and to map their sustainability performance based on your own selected criteria. And you can determine the performance in several ways. For example, look at their website, look at customer reviews, talk to the owner, talk to staff, and do on-site visits, if this is something that's possible to do in your business. So for the Good Tourism Institute, we have developed or listed 9 main criteria that we feel are essential in selecting sustainable accommodations, to determine if the accommodation fits in your sustainable supply chain. Because this is always, not every sustainable accommodation will fit your business. In the end, it always comes down to who's your target group, what is your niche, what are your unique selling points. So always think about that when you select partners, among others, accommodations. So just going over the suggested criteria. So for example, what we usually do is that, I think it's also in the Travelife system, there is an Excel document available to check and select accommodations. You can select your own criteria, but for example, these 9, and then score the accommodation on 1 to 5. So 1 being not committed to this at all, 5 being very committed. Paulo.
And now just one thing, there is someone willing to get in, but because you are now the host, you will have to accept. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, wait.
I'm trying to send. It's Katarina.
Okay, good. That's good to know. As soon as someone enters, I will accept them.
Thanks.
Perfect. Yes. Oh, and now I'm opening the chat, and I see Isabel saying that a nice way for the 2 operators to work with DMCs that are certified and have that knowledge. Yeah, that's a really good approach. That if you're booking your accommodations through a partner, but then as an agent, it's still important that you know on what criteria your DMC is selecting accommodations. So always check that as well. And if they don't have specific criteria and they just do it randomly, send over these 9 to see if they can create more structure in that. In the end, when it comes to a sustainable supply chain, transparency is most important. So make sure you have it in writing. So even if you're doing it through a DMC or a local partner, you still have that direct influence of making sure that you know what they are booking for your client, because you are responsible for your client's experience. And if you promise them something sustainable, you can do everything in your power to make sure that happens. So suggested criteria, I will walk through them very quickly. But yeah, basically 1 is overall commitment to sustainability. So accommodations that are truly committed, add value to the client experience, are good for locals, good for the environment, and just make sure that they have implemented this throughout their business. Second is employing locals. So accommodations that mainly work with local staff, have their own training program, and most importantly, invest in supporting locals to become supervisor or even manager. There are too many hotels where there's, for example, in Africa, there's all black staff, but only the manager is white. And those accommodations that are truly invested in supporting locals and to offer them development opportunities for the future, also focus on making the local staff responsible, so supervisor or even a manager. Third is purchasing local and sustainable products. So for example, buying local products and food from markets, locals directly benefit from tourism. So this is the accommodation, making sure they have a sustainable and local supply chain in their turn. And also, besides supporting the local economy, accommodations that purchase local and sustainable food also provide clients with healthy and local food, adding on to the travel experience. And they're also supporting the local farmers. For supporting local communities, so sustainable accommodations highly value local communities, operate their business in a way that communities directly benefit. And for example, they do this through supporting local initiatives, such as building a school or community centers, adding someone, yep, and giving back to the community. So they really focus on spreading their impact. So they're not just there to provide travelers a great travel experience, they're there to do just that, but to also make sure that the locals around have a good opportunities and benefit from this tourism. They're really focusing on better places to live in, better places to visit. 5, not a new criteria, but focusing on single-use plastic and waste management. Especially in developing countries, plastic and waste is a huge issue. And this is something where I feel accommodations have to take responsibility. And for example, those committed to sustainability have removed single-use plastic where possible. So for example, they're not offering water in plastic bottles anymore, so they've replaced it with glass. Also the accommodations that are focused on providing free water in the lobby, for example, switched it to providing filtered water. They no longer use plastic straws, but wooden straws, or bamboo straws, and they're also offering shampoo and soap in dispensers that can be refilled. You can also combine it with the local and sustainable purchasing criteria. For example, accommodations that providing local soap that they've bought from a local producer. 6, efficient water use. Also sometimes an issue, but sustainable accommodations will have water efficiency systems in place, are collecting rainwater where applicable, and also ask clients to reuse linen and towels and to take shorter showers, and that are not compromising local communities' access to water. Great example I have is when I visited Cape Town, South Africa, in the period where Cape Town has a lot of issues with water, and especially in the last few months, there's actually a threat that there won't be enough water at all to flush your toilet or etc. And then what they're doing in the luxurious hotels, where all the hotel rooms have bathtubs, is that they keep the plugs at reception. And if you want to take a bath, there's a note next to your bathtub asking, like, okay, we have placed your plug at the reception. We have done this to reduce water. Taking a bath is an X amount of water. And we really need this for drinking in the next months. But if you really want to take a bath, you can go pick up your plug at reception. There is hardly anyone who does that, that goes down to reception and says, okay, I want to spill this water just because I want to take a bath. No one does that. So it's a really good trick to make sure that customers are not taking baths in an especially dry period. Also, the not compromising local communities' access to water is an important one. There are also stories, for example, from Southern America, where there was a lodge that had a huge infinity pool, beautiful, customers loved it. However, the nearby villages had a lot of issues with water, because it was all tapped to the pool. So these are issues that you can focus on. 7 focuses on efficient energy use. yeah, so it's kind of the same as what you're expected to do as a tour operator, but focus on renewable energy where possible and on saving energy by using LED lights, occupancy sensors, lights off policies, and also sufficient isolation. 8, contributing to nature conservation. Yeah, so hotels and accommodations that are committed will operate in harmony, and besides minimizing negative effect, will do their best to contribute to nature conservation. So support biodiversity, wildlife conservation programs, and also involving guests to contribute too. And 9, very much related to what you're offering, is responsible travel experiences. So for example, lodges or accommodations that have their own activities. Yeah, so they will offer activities that have transparent operational guidelines, that local communities are treated with respect, and also that nature is not disturbed, and that guests have the opportunity to maximize their positive impact. Again here, so if this accommodation is working with another local partner to operate their activities, try and find out what those guidelines are. So what are the what company is offering these travel experiences? Are they sustainable? Do they have guidelines? And also, what's the agreement between the accommodation and the operator? For example, in a worst case scenario, you offer sustainable trips, you've selected a sustainable accommodation, and then the day activity provider the accommodation works with offers elephant rides, for example. So then something that is generally not done in the tourism industry, but then through the supply chain, it still happens that there's an unsustainable practice. And here is communication is key. So make sure that working with partners, with accommodations, even though it's a 3-step down, try and find out what are they doing. Is there something that you don't agree with? And even though you're small, you do have some influence. For example, sending an email or requesting it, or have your customers ask about it. So even though you don't have the direct influence to stop them from happening, you have the influence to make them think, and to think about, okay, is this what we want to offer, or is it something that we can change? Best case scenario, if you would notice this happening, personally, I would ask you to not book with this accommodation, but then that always depends on what kind of position are you in, what is the availability on the location, or do you have a niche, for example, where your travelers are very demanding on what they want to book. So it's kind of navigating, but these criteria might really help you to figure out where to start to check and select accommodations. For more background information, I actually wrote an article about this last year. You can read it on the Good Tourism platform in the online library. And it's kind of the same 9 criteria plus communication tips, how to check and select sustainable accommodations. Then the Travelife criteria. So I've selected the Travelife criteria from the certified report to make sure that we cover all of them. So those that are working on partner, like some of these criteria might be optional for you, but still I thought it would be good to go through all of them. Also because I believe certification is a really good tool to structure sustainability, but it's not the end, basically. So being Travelife partner doesn't mean you're fully sustainable. If you're Travelife certified, it doesn't mean you're truly sustainable. There's always room for improvement, room for being creative, making more positive impact, push your influence. So this is an encouragement from my side, is to see this Travelife criteria system as guidelines, but not as the final achievement in your sustainability development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Travelife system so we can just go through. Before we do that, I would like to ask you to type in the comments how you book your accommodations, because this will help me provide more guidance on the criteria. because it might be not applicable for you. I might have some tips on how to work with this. So if you can type in the chat, oh, and I need to find the chat. Not sure where I left it. Well, I can stop sharing anyway. The chat. Booking bed banks directly with the accommodation. Okay. Claudia, yes, you can speak.
Hello, Anne.
Hi.
So we have one doubt regarding Chapter 6 that we cannot comply, and why. We are a micro agency, only 2 persons working, and we have a management group. So we work through that management group that is a management group of independent agencies, okay? So we are all travel agencies that make part of that group. So regarding that, we use this management group to book through bed banks, and the bed banks that the bed banks work themselves with the accommodations directly. I don't know how they work. So how can I comply with Chapter 6? Because I already sent an email to the management group requesting them to insert in their contracts this information regarding sustainability, but I don't get an answer from them. So I don't know how to.
We never speak directly with the hotels. Never. We make reservations through bed banks, but
through bed banks, but through the management group.
Yeah, so that also means you don't select the accommodations yourself.
We select the accommodations via bed banks, but we have an agreement with the management group to get more commission, to get more conditions, yeah. And we have an intranet, and we book through them and go to the bed banks ourselves, but always through the management group.
But you still have influence on which accommodations you book, so it's not out of your hands.
No.
Okay. In that case, first of all, always explain your situation in the Travelife system, because only then it will be really easy for the coach to determine, like, okay, it's an exceptional situation. How can we look at this? Because, for example, if you would just say,
I don't know if it's an exception situation, because I believe most of the persons that are here belong to that management group, and also book through the management group to get more commission, better conditions, through the management group with the bed banks. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. We have an intranet, and inside that intranet we have 10 bed banks, and we choose one and choose the hotel, the accommodation that we want, and we book with the accommodation, but through those intervenients, let's say.
Yeah, no, that's not an issue. So then next question is, do you book accommodations, the same accommodations quite often, or is it always like ad hoc?
It's different, always different.
Okay. Okay, so looking from Travelife perspective, it's important that you have a policy or at least guidelines on what you feel is important in an accommodation. And even though you're booking through the bed banks, there are still ways to kind of figure out what the accommodations are doing in terms of sustainability. For example, via their own websites, customer reviews, booking.com, for example, but then you can
Yes.
still, it doesn't matter where you book them, but it's important that you kind of figure out, this is what I find important.
Okay, but regarding the contracts with the accommodations, we saw a sample in the Travelife that we are supposed to get some ideas, but we cannot make direct contracts with the accommodation regarding sustainability because we go through all these intervenients and I don't know what to do. I cannot send this to my management group because they aren't an accommodation, so I don't know.
Yeah, so so this was 6.1. So for 6.1, you are still required to have the guidelines of and criteria what you feel is important in an accommodation. You can use this to book and select your accommodation through the bed banks. Then for 6.2, which focuses on accommodation, this is not applicable to you because you're booking them via these booking platforms. So for 6.2, you can say not applicable. However, it is important that you, and I think you've already done that, but then please upload the communication that you've had with this management platform, that you have asked for sustainability filter or for at least to include sustainability or your own guidelines in the contract. So it's kind of an exception because Travelife system is focused on very traditional companies. So if you see here for chapter 6, it asks, do you book accommodations or you don't book them for clients? There are kind of two options, but of course there are a lot more. So if you book it via these platforms, 6.1 is still relevant because you need your criteria, because you do have the influence of what you're booking. And then 6.2, communicating these accommodations is not applicable because that's not an option for you. And this is what you can explain. Paulo.
I'm just wondering whether, okay, in this case, the agency contacted the management group and asked them about their sustainability practices, or how do they handle the choice of hotels or the contracts they have, etc. But I'm wondering if in 6.2, if it is enough for the agency to tell the management group, okay, this is my accommodation policy and my accommodation guidelines, and I would appreciate if you could pass on this to the bed banks or whatever, because this is a very long chain, and that is the problem. Is the agency buys through a platform from their management group, the management group buys from a bed bank, the bed bank, God knows where will they buy the accommodation, and in the end you have the hotel. So it might be 3 or 4 steps to get there. And but the closest to the agency is obviously the management group. So is it enough if the agency can demonstrate that, okay, we inquired our management group, this is the email we sent, and we are still waiting? Because I know it is not the first agency who tells me that they don't get an answer from the management group, and even ourselves, I'm trying to figure out a way to maybe to get up to talk to the management groups and try to persuade them to give an answer to that. But
yeah, okay, so I have two. Yeah, I have 2 answers. One is my Travelife answer, which is according to the criteria. This is really focused on, do you book accommodations directly? Yes, then you need to communicate with them. If you book it via another platform, it's not applicable. So the communication is not necessary to comply to 6.2. However, I would say Good Tourism Institute talking, I would, as a tourism business, try any possible way to still get my criteria over to the accommodation, or to either include it. I'm not sure how it works, but maybe you have contract conditions somewhere that you can add an attachment, or what you said, like with a path, create a collective actions. For example, we'll create sustainable hotel guidelines from your working group and then present them at one point, basically. So to really focus and push what you're doing in terms of sustainability, and asking for the accommodations to work with that as well. But that's all outside the scope of Travelife, basically. But still, I would recommend to do that. Yeah. Okay, and
Thank you.
let's see. You're welcome. Okay. Well, we kind of started now. Okay, so 6.1, 6.2. Are they clear? Because I think what we can do now is I could just go through the criteria. If you have a question, please raise your hand and then we can address it right away. So for now, are there any questions about 6.1, sustainable accommodations policy, and 6.2, accommodation communication? I do have one comment on 6.1. So for those accommodations that book their accommodations directly, and I saw in the chat there's still quite a few that do it directly. If you make use of this accommodation policy, please make sure that you're really adapting it to your own business, because I too often see the template, but then with the company's logo on it. And even though you still comply to the Travelife criteria, in the end, you need to see Travelife as guidance, as structure, and to create documents that you actually want to use. So if you want to talk about, okay, I need to create sustainability policy for my accommodations that I want to book, really think about, okay, what do I want to book as a business, and think further than the Travelife criteria. It's not just copy pasting the template, but it's really thinking about, what do I find important in an accommodation that's sustainable, and what do my travelers think? Because this is also, it's not the same for all your businesses. I can imagine you have all different kinds of target groups that have different demands and different types of accommodations. So really focus on your business. And of course, these templates are there for inspiration, and you can take out a few parts, but make sure to edit and to tailor it to your business. Yes, then 6.2, I figured I'm gonna go through them anyway. So this is really about clearly communicating your sustainability objectives and requirements regarding accommodations. So we discussed the exceptions. So this is if you book accommodations directly, you're expected to, and these have different options. You can either include sustainability in your contract with accommodations, but this might be a bit difficult if you are a smaller operator and you often get the contract from the accommodation with the rates instead of the other way around. You can send an MOU that you have them sign with the basic agreements, but this is only relevant if you book this accommodation more often, so you actually build on a relationship together. So for those that book accommodations more randomly or smaller, it's good to send a letter. So I think, is it in the guidance? Yeah, I think so. Wait, let me double check. No, that's not the one. Okay, so I can share that with you, Rita. We can share that later. Is that, for example, we have a template of a letter where you kind of introduce your company to the accommodation, saying, okay, we feel sustainability is very important. We're working on making our supply chain more sustainable, and we have the following tips for you to become more sustainable. And I'm not sure in the countries you work with what kind of approach you should do. You can either say, like, these are my tips for you, or change the tone of voice, inviting them to see what they're already doing, but that's up to you. Again, it's a template, but at least communicating your sustainability values and what you kind of expect from your accommodations. That's the easiest way, to influence your accommodations. Yes, I will share that example letter with Rita after the session. Then the other scenario is if you book accommodations through a local partner, a local DMC. In this case, Chapter 6 is half applicable and half non-applicable. For example, still 6.1 is applicable because you need your criteria on what you feel is important for sustainable accommodation. But the change here is that you need to include this in your agreements with your local DMC. So you're not directly responsible for booking sustainable accommodation, but you're directly responsible for what your travelers get. So you need to make sure that your local partner knows what you expect in terms of accommodations. And this could be including it in their contract conditions or an MOU, it's like a memorandum of understanding, together agreeing, okay, these are the 10 criteria that we feel are important and we will select our accommodations based on this. Yeah, and then the scenario that we already discussed, if you book it via bed banks, so it's non-applicable, still have your guidelines available for yourself, so you can still make your own decisions, but the communication is not applicable. However, recommended to create a collective approach to still push that influence. 6.3 is about preference is given to accommodations that work with, well, internationally certification. So if they are certified. Important here is that it's asking for your policy, but basically the answer is yes, we take this into account when we book accommodations, and then it's always important to give some examples and some evidence. So have you booked with a certified accommodation? Prove it. Upload screenshots or a photo or an invoice, or I'm not sure what kind of evidence you would get, but say, yeah, I booked these. If you want to go a step further, and that's for certified, that's required. For partner, it's optional, is to indicate the percentage of sustainable accommodations and to mention a number of certified accommodations you guys are working with. And this can still be rough estimations. You don't have to, well, it's recommended to go in your accommodation bookings and see, okay, what have I done over the last year? But if it's 20 or 25, don't worry about that difference. It's a rough estimation to really give the coach and auditor an idea. Okay, so this company has looked into it. They are aware of why it's important to work with certified accommodations, etc. Again, here, if you're booked with direct accommodations, this is pretty easy to check. Also, with the overview, where you map out your sustainability performance of your accommodations, certification is one of the criteria. So if you start doing that, listing all the key accommodations you work with, yeah, you can start with doing that. About this overview, because I also get a lot of questions about this, is that companies say like, yeah, but I work with 100+ accommodations. You can start somewhere. So you can start like all the accommodations that you're booking from now on, start mapping what they're doing in terms of sustainability, or start with the top 5 or the top 10 per region or per destination. So where Travelife doesn't expect you to have the overviews already and done. Travelife expects you to prove that you are gaining insight in what you're booking. So for partner, it's not mandatory at all. For certified, it is, but focused on, yeah, the inside. So we don't expect that you only work with sustainable accommodations. It focuses on that, you know, okay, these are the accommodations I book. These accommodations I work with quite often. I want to, yeah, I gain insight, and these are certified, yes or no. If you, sometimes there are destinations that don't have certified accommodations, and in this case it's not applicable, but yeah, depends on where you're traveling to. So what's expected is explaining what you're working on, which accommodations certification accommodation you work with, and to add the numbers, the percentage and the number of certified accommodation. If you've never looked into it, well, it's for certified, it's mandatory. So I would recommend to still click yes and start with this overview. So start with, okay, which of the accommodations is certified, or write down that from now on you will start to work on it. And then it's important that during the on-site audit for certified, you have evidence of actually booking certified accommodations. So in the report, you can still say, okay, we're looking into it, but during the audit, it's important that you can still show that it's actually something you're doing. Paulo.
I'm just wondering, in some destinations where you can hardly find any certified or GSTC recognized certified accommodation, if there is one hotel, but it costs kind of twice as much as all the others, I mean, you are not expected to choose that one, are you?
No. Well, I think this is also like, I think Travelife focuses on, okay, you need to prefer certified accommodations, but as a sustainable tourism business, you also have to look in, okay, what's available, what fits my clients' needs, plus, as I mentioned, not all accommodations that are not certified are not sustainable. So it's your responsibility as a tour operator to look into, is this certified option really the best option for me? Yeah, in the end, it's your own decision, but it's important that you do give preference to certified if they're equal. Yeah. Okay. Contract conditions. Yeah, I think we covered this, the 3 different scenarios. So either directly with the contract condition could also be an MOU. So directly with the accommodations, have an MOU, or if you book them ad hoc, you can say non-applicable because I don't have contract with my accommodations. I book my accommodations ad hoc. However, I do send this letter to encourage them to become more sustainable. If you book it via DMCs, you can say non-applicable because I don't select my own accommodations myself. However, I have made this agreement with my local partners that they select their accommodations based on the sustainability criteria. If you book them via bed banks, it's not applicable because even though you book your accommodations yourself based on your own criteria, you don't have direct contact with the accommodation. So with that, you have covered the scenarios. 6.5, and I think we also received a question about this. So basically, it's about distributing the best practice standards and guidance. And this also overlaps with the letter I mentioned. So it's basically, it comes down to you as a tour operating business recommending sustainable practices for hotels, to hotels, to the partners you work with. So I think we received a question that they have communicated the mission and policy and communicated the code of conduct and sustainable accommodation policy. And for, focusing on best practice standards, you really need to focus on what can the accommodation do themselves. So 6.2 is about communicating sustainability, but 6.5 is about practical tips, training, standards. So what can the accommodation do? Travelife is actually at the moment for Sustour developing gathering the existing tools and training documents that companies have written for hotels to become more sustainable. So we're gathering them and then use them as inspiration for tour operators to send out. So if you have 1 or 2 weeks, we'll have this available, and then you can select and see, okay, this is the guideline. I want to send to my accommodations I'm working with. So I think in the guidance there, there are a few examples, but we will have a lot more that are more recent and more relevant to send out. Again, if you're working through bed banks, this is not applicable. Then 6.6, it's about the baseline and self-evaluation. So accommodations are required to self-evaluate their company, and basically this just means certification. So if you work with accommodations on a longer agreement, make sure to invite them to become certified. And this is also something that you can include in your letter and when you're sharing the best practice toolkit. Just include a sentence, we encourage you to become certified, and then recommend a certification scheme. It's for certified, it's not mandatory, so you can also just simply say no. Then participation to education and training. This is important. So tick none available if you're not selecting accommodations on behalf of your clients, or if you have not been requested to inform your accommodations about training opportunities. I don't think this has been the case for Portugal. I don't think anyone has been invited to invite their accommodations. So you can simply say not applicable. We have not been invited to invite our accommodations. This is as simply as that. Collective actions. I think the UPHAVT idea is a really good one. To make sure that you're at least pushing something. It's also upon request. So basically, Travelife, if you haven't been requested to participate in a collective action, it's basically not applicable. So if you have done it, or if you want to, explain it, upload supporting evidence. But if you haven't been requested to, you can click non-applicable and you still comply. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Marjolene? You're muted.
Marjolene está mute, está muda. Tem que ativar o microfone.
E agora?
Tá bem? Está ótimo, está ótimo.
I'm sorry to disturb, but I have your 6.5 is different than the 6.5 that we have in Travelife, for instance.
I think you're in the Travelife partner report then.
Yes.
Yeah, this is certified. So if I go,
Okay.
So so that's important to look at the names, because certified has more criteria than partner. But we have a mix here. I thought I'll just do certified, so you know about everything.
Sorry, silly question.
No worries. In the chat, Isabel has a question. So when a property like Hilton invites us for an event like planting trees, can that be considered on 6.7? Not really, because 6.7 really refers to an official training for accommodations. So for an accommodation to become more sustainable. It does, for example, in I would say in chapter 2 or 3, when it comes to sustainable office, you can make a mention of that you work with your accommodations on the sustainable project, for example. So 6.7 is really about a training for the accommodations, and your only role is to stimulate them to participate. Okay. Incentives. Well, basically, incentives are offered to accommodation, which actively engage in sustainability. So, for example, for partner, this is optional. For certified, it's mandatory. And this is really about also the accommodations that are on your website. So if you have a website where you indicate accommodations in itineraries or where you highlight them, this is the place where you can do this. So if they are certified, or if they have a really cool local project, or etc., you can add this. There, a good example is a tour operator I've worked with here in the Netherlands, and what they have done is they created their own, well, it's a green leave, and it's not an additional certification scheme, but they really say, like, okay, we are adding this leave to the accommodations that we feel are making an additional positive impact. So they really want to highlight what they're doing by adding this green leave, and they're on their sustainability page, they have explained this, and then they also explain per accommodation or per activity what it actually is, why they have awarded this leave to this accommodation or activity. And then with that, you really create this incentive for the partner that is actually highlighted as sustainable. So for certified, it's really important that you somehow promote in a newsletter or on your website, the accommodations that you work with. Paolo.
I'm just wondering if the agency doesn't have a website, which is possible, and there are examples of that. And if they are buying accommodation through a bed bank again, how can they offer this incentive, unless it is a financial incentive of some sort? I don't know, but I'm just trying to figure out. If they don't have a place where they can put a green leaf on next to the logo.
Yeah, for example, on Facebook, what they could do is, well, every week or every 2 weeks, create a post where they want to highlight a specific accommodation they work with. That could be a really good option. With the bed banks, okay, so if they book via bed banks, of course you can't highlight them. However, I'm just curious to hear from these tour operators that have a website and book via bed banks. So do you still list accommodations on your website, or is that all, how do you say that? You don't communicate to the client beforehand which accommodations you're going to stay in, because it doesn't really matter where you book, it's what you have listed on your website. Yeah, so I'm just curious to hear, I'm not sure if you know, Paolo or Rita, is that even though they book via bed banks, what's on their website? So which accommodations are included in example itineraries, for example? That, because if the accommodations are listed on the website, this is where you could do it. If they don't list accommodation on the website, it's not applicable.
There are probably people who knows a lot more than myself about this. I would say that the booking via bed bank is just a booking, you know. The agency can still, or some agencies, they might still select an accommodation, and then despite the fact that I chose to go to the Hilton in Kuala Lumpur, but I will do the booking through the bed bank, or through my management group, and the management group through the bed bank. So that means that my direct connection with the Hilton in Kuala Lumpur is zero, okay? Because I do everything, but it doesn't mean that I cannot sort of promote this Kuala Lumpur in my webpage. Why not? If I'm using it a lot, I can still, I'm offering free publicity for them, but I don't see a reason. I don't think that they will ever see my webpage or my Facebook, but
yeah. No, the thing is that it's kind of connected to, so basically 6.9 really focuses on if you work with 10 accommodations and 4 of them are sustainable, that you create incentives for those so that the others feel pressure to also work sustainably. And then 6.9 is connected to chapter 10, and I think it's 10.12, where you indicate sustainable options for your travelers. So it's really connected to that your travelers know, okay, what's the right option for me. So yeah, here I would say, look what's on your website, and connect it to criteria. And let me quickly check which one that is. I think this one. because what you could do is combine the answer. Just make sure that you fully comply to 10.13, so indicating sustainable accommodations and excursions, so that they are promoted with logos or other messages and recognizable as a more sustainable option. So this is kind of the explanation I just gave, but then without the incentive for the accommodation, but more the incentive for the traveler. Because if you don't see the incentive for the accommodation itself, then I would say focus on 10.13 instead and copy paste your answer in 6 point. Anna.
Yeah, I'm one of those who has a website and buys exclusively from bed banks. And our main challenge is to get info from bed banks, because we don't have the choice of selecting hotels we choose. We can't select hotels we show in our website. We can select providers, and just one of them identifies green hotels. So that green leaf is just a very small part of our inventory. So this is a big challenge, not only for travel agents, but also for the information we give to the customers. And it's about 40,000 hotels in the whole world. So it's a tiny bit offer. And technically, I believe not all websites can insert this information easily. So I think this is a challenge for agencies like ours.
Yeah, I can imagine. So the thing is with Travelife, like if it's really out of your hands, it is non-applicable and you can explain why it isn't. But if you see a tiny opportunity where you can see or where you can promote or where you can request sustainable options, focus on that and explain and highlight that in the Travelife system. Because if it's really not an option, it's not
Although
applicable.
the answer is non-applicable, because we're working on this. We'll have one single bed bank giving us this information via XML. So we are working with them, and we will put there the green leaf as they inform, but it's a small and a tiny part of our offer. And it's not possible to identify in the rest of the inventory, which is quite big, of course.
Yeah, and then just curious, have you emailed or connected with the other bed banks to see if they are willing to do this? Yeah.
Some of them replied that they're working on it.
Okay, well, that's good news. Okay, so what's also important for Travelife is that you're showing how you are trying to get to influence companies. So a really good opportunity for you would to be uploading that communication, so that you actively tried as a tour operator and you didn't just say, okay, I don't have influence on this, but that you actively try to change it. And that's all Travelife expects. So yeah, well done. Okay, then the second section. So these are pretty similar. So 6.10 is only relevant if you have contracts or an MOU with accommodations. If you do it via bed banks or if you don't book the accommodations for your clients, it's non-applicable. It's also often so that most accommodations that are located in countries where this is illegal. So depending on which country you offer tours to, it also most likely be regulated locally. Accommodations are stimulated to offer locally and sustainably produced souvenirs. Again, here is the same situation. So if you have the opportunity to communicate with the accommodations through a letter, through contracts, then please do so. Then it's applicable, and then you need to include such a sentence in the communication. Also recommended to include this in the contract with your local partner so that they can communicate to the local partners, local accommodations, and then not applicable if you do it via web banks. Same goes for 6.12, focusing on respecting and featuring local architecture and cultural heritage. 6.13, sexual exploitation, and also, so this focuses on contracts still. 6.14, however, I would just recommend to copy paste a statement. So in case of clear evidence that the accommodations you offer, you book with, basically. So don't think about the contracted part, but think about, okay, if I know an accommodation I have sent clients to, and if there is clear evidence, and then clear evidence, we're talking about like legal evidence that they actually jeopardize provision of food or if etc., then you decide to stop working with this accommodation. This is just a statement that you can make as a sustainable tour operator. So in case of clear evidence that the accommodations I book with are legally prosecuted for jeopardizing basic services, I will stop working with them. That's sufficient for now. Then 6.
Just one question regarding the last one. All this can be inputted into the accommodation policy, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can add it in the policy, but it's also for Travelife. This is kind of a statement that you prove to Travelife that you will not book or work with accommodations that jeopardize basic services.
But I was asking that because if we find a way to distribute our accommodation policy to our accommodation suppliers, bed banks or hotels directly or whatever, we can input one paragraph about the situation or one paragraph about all the previous ones, so they know and they are aware of our policy. Okay.
Yeah, in that case, I would include that. Yeah, absolutely. But if you are a travel agent or a tour operator and you communicate to your accommodations, it's a bit harsh to or offensive to include this in a polite conversation about I want you to become more sustainable. But you can also include a sentence like we will not work with you if, but yeah, you can also leave it out. But then if you want to go with the collective approach, I would definitely include it. 6.15, also part of the communication to the accommodation. It's about stimulating purchase and use of local foods. And then biodiversity. So contract accommodations are expected to limit the negative impact on local and global biodiversity. This is actually a new criteria, so I don't think, there is guidance. So also include this in a communication, but you can summarize it. So what you can do is turn it around. So focus on what can the accommodation do to maximize their positive impact. So don't ask the accommodation to limit their negative impact, because then what does that practically even mean? It's about encouraging the accommodation to focus on maximizing the positive impact and then automatically limiting their negative impact. So always think about the tone of voice in your communication and focus on encouragement and not on limitations. And I think in terms of sustainability, that's the key message anyway, in terms of communicating with your entire supply chain, your travelers, on your website, social media. Focus on the opportunities and the good things sustainability brings and not the limitations. Let me see, I had a final part here. Yes, so basically, well, what's next? If I talk about the communication part, but it's important that you create a sustainable supply chain, that you focus on both selecting sustainable accommodation, selecting responsible travel experiences, working with local guides, and that you have sustainable transport, local transport, for example, or a local driver, and to really focus on developing and offering better travel experiences to increase your employee satisfaction and commitment, to make sure that they want to take that extra step for your business, to support your clients, and to develop your business, to focus on customer loyalty, to only receive 5-star customer reviews, to include sustainability in your marketing, and to therefore to better position your business online as a sustainable tourism business. Well, you can do that by becoming a Good Tourism Institute member. So you can create a free account on goodtourisminstitute.com, get free access to our introduction course, join discussions in our community. I think there's actually a discussion on how to select sustainable accommodations, to read premium library editions, and to register for webinars and workshops. And we're actually announcing a new workshop by the end of this week about how to make profit from positive impact. I think it will be half of May that we're launching it. So if you are a member, you'll be informed of new workshops and sessions, and you'll be able to register. In terms of courses, as I mentioned, we have the Become a Better Tour Operator course. So we have level 0.5, which is our introduction course. It's for free if you are a member, which is also free. And we have the Become a Better Tour Operator level 1, which is our complete course to help tourism businesses become better right away. And students called it an eye-opening experience that takes your business to the next level. And basically, I won't go all through it, but you will know how to build your business on a strong foundation, implement sustainability, develop better travel experiences, increase customer loyalty, employee satisfaction, focus on a good online marketing strategy, convert your ideal target group, and then analyze and optimize your online strategy. So overall, a successful entrepreneur in a sustainable way. And we do this via key methods, and then we have workbook assignments, best practices, videos, and supporting evidence, supporting materials to help you in a practical way to improve and to level up your business. And then with the forum, we have a 10% discount code. So if you use forum SAS 10, you get a 10% discount on the Good Tourism Institute platform if you purchase the level 1 course. But as I said, becoming a member and the level 0.5 is for free. And I would love to see you there. I'm also hoping to see a lot of you become Travelife Partner and certified. And I'm really hoping that this session gave you some more insight in the Travelife criteria regarding accommodations, and that I clarified the main issues. Are there any questions I can help you with? No questions?
Silence. Silence.
Hi, Anne.
Silence is good.
I do have some questions. Because Compasso as a DMC that works only B2B, we never deal with the final client. And actually some of these criteria sometimes are quite challenging for me to answer, because we don't really, we only deal with Portugal mainland, actually. In our case specific, I know the Catarina is there and she deals with the Azores. So how do we, for example, and we don't have that, we don't promote any hotels in our website or something. So you were talking about the incentives or those green logos, or how can we, as DMCs, I think it's or PCOs, Marjolaine, maybe she identifies also with this. How can we turn this around? And simplify a little bit, because.
Before I can answer, I just need a little bit more information. So you, the travel operators book with you, and then you book the accommodations or the trip.
Yeah.
And then do you have any direct influence on what you book, or is it all coming down from your partners?
No, we might have some influence. For us specifically, we deal more with the M&I groups. We have some leisure also, but we deal more with M&I groups. So we might not have that many tour operators talking to us, but other travel agencies, so smaller ones. And they send us the request either with already with some ideas of the specific place they want. But then we can sometimes, and most of the times, I think, we suggest the best hotel or the best activities depending on the goal of the group and the program and so on.
Yeah.
So it's tailor-made.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good position to be in, I would say. So what I would recommend is to create your own guidelines for sustainable accommodations, and to simply communicate that to your partners, saying, okay, we are your partner to book this for you, but these are our criteria that we book our selection criteria. The criteria that we book our accommodations on. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would turn that around, and you can always well, it depends on what kind of relationship you have with your partners, to ask their input. Is okay, saying, okay, we want to develop our sustainable accommodations policy, because we find this important. What is according to you something that we should really include? So really make them part of why you're doing this, and that they feel taken seriously, and that it's not something, if we're talking about limitations and opportunities, that it's not you saying, okay, I won't book anything else than sustainable, and that they might go to someone else, but really include them in creating more sustainable trips. And then you create your own guidelines that you book your trips on, but include your key partners in developing those.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, you are hearing me?
Yeah.
You can hear?
Yeah.
I have a question. Normally the client chooses the hotel, but we also have the groups once a month. Normally we have, but it's very difficult for some groups to can found a hotel for them. For example, we have a group of 40 or 50 people at the end of this month to Picos de Europa, is in Spain, and it was very difficult to find an hotel that accepts and have available rooms for the group. So we can choose. We can't choose for any sustainable factors or criteria. What do you think we can do in this case? It's
I think that if the destination is set and you have a certain number of people that you need to get into the destination, and there is no availability in a certified hotel, I would say it's kind of out of your hands. So then I would say, yeah, book what is available. However, in that process before, you can either say, okay, is it possible to relocate? For example, is there a village nearby that has a suitable
they want
accommodation?
on that local.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
normally
So
we make closed groups, so they decided more or less. Normally they decided the hotel, but sometimes the hotel is full, or sometimes we can't found any hotel for them. It happened very, very often.
Yeah, well, the most important part is that you as a tourism business have a policy in place, is that you, where possible and where you have influence, you select sustainable accommodations. But then where it's not possible due to availability or a certain location, it's kind of out of your hands. However, do you have a website, or you're on Facebook only?
Yes, but we don't have that. We are making a new website, so the one we have is not don't have any information about that.
Okay, because there are also a lot of opportunities.
But we have Facebook or Instagram also.
Yeah, no, this is specifically relevant for the website. So for example, if you say like the client chooses the hotel, you still have the opportunity to create a page where you explain why it's important that they choose a sustainable hotel and then make recommendations. So even though they choose it, but they might not have any knowledge or insights on sustainable accommodation. So here your role would be to provide this information and to support them in making a sustainable decision and to encourage them to do that. So here it's focusing on the information provision on sustainable accommodations and then to make recommendations. Also, if the client requests a certain hotel and you feel like, nah, they're not that sustainable, I don't really want to book that, but I do know a really good alternative, make your case. So email them back, say, okay, I can book this for you. However, I strongly recommend you go for this one because, and then don't only list the sustainability advantages, but also why that accommodation is better than the other one. So just sustainability.
Sometimes is the price, it depends.
Yeah, but see, you can still try.
In common way,
end,
if the price is good for the group, it's easier to change. If it is not good, they don't accept.
Yeah, no, I can understand. But the thing is, what's important is that you still try and encourage them to make a more responsible decision. In the end, I know it's up to the client, but you still have an opportunity to say, and not directly say, okay, I'll book this for you, but say, okay, I can. However, I feel this is better suited. And that's the change that you can make as a tourism business. That's your influence.
We can try.
You can try. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think that's, in general, talking about sustainability, it's always about making people more aware about sustainability. So if it's your accommodations, if it's your partner, if it's your customer, often they have no clue what it takes to be a sustainable traveler, for example. And they really rely on tourism experts such as you to provide them with the best decision and the best opportunities. And actually, that's in our online library. I just how do you say that? I launched a new article about the sustainability say-do gap. So when you see all these statistics, for example, from Expedia or Booking.com, like 90% wants to travel sustainably. And everyone is throwing around these statistics that there's like almost all travelers are looking for sustainable travel, but then in reality, there's a very small percentage actually doing it. And they call this the sustainability say-do gap. And then what can you do to close that gap as a tourism business? So this article really focuses also on raising awareness. So what can you do as a tourism business to make sure that what they're saying they're going to do and what they were looking for, so sustainable options, that they actually book that and then with you. So I would recommend, I have it open, I can put it in the chat. Because in the end, it comes down to finding out where you have influence as a tour operator or as a travel agent, and then use that to your advantage to spread the impact and make sure that travelers travel sustainably with you. Okay.
I think if we have not more questions, I think it's time to thank you very much, Anne, for your time and so much interesting explanation. I think it's very useful for us, and it's a good afternoon to stay with you. Thanks for your time, and also now if you want to start and to share the courses of the Good Institute. I also already made the first one, the free, and it's very interesting, and so you have as a member of this group you have that discount. Thank you so much, Anne, and for all of you. And now in Portuguese, sorry, Anne. Quero agradecer muito também aqui a vossa presença e a vossa participação. Acho que de facto com todas estas questões tornou-se ainda muito mais importante, e espero que de facto depois desta tarde tenham saído aqui com mais questões esclarecidas, e recordar-vos também que podem sempre depois enviar por e-mail questões adicionais que entretanto que vos surjam. Eu irei também passar à Anne, depois também assim que me enviar o material também irei partilhar convosco. Relativamente ao vídeo desta tarde, se quiserem depois podem enviar um e-mail aqui para o info@forumdasustentabilidade.pt, esse pedido que terei muito gosto em enviar-vos aqui o vídeo, talvez por WeTransfer por causa do peso que ele tenha. Espero que tenha sido útil este nosso primeiro encontro, que seja o primeiro de muitos. No próximo dia 20 temos então a nossa próxima sessão, desta vez de manhã, dedicada ao tema do carbono e portanto também daqui da medição da pegada do carbono. As inscrições decorrem como desta vez, podem fazê-lo através do nosso endereço de e-mail. E pronto, e naturalmente espero que tenha então sido útil. Se tiverem alguma sugestão, espero que tenha sido do vosso agrado também este nosso formato, e quaisquer sugestões, estamos sempre aqui. Obrigada a todos.
Obrigada.
Obrigada.
Obrigado,
boa tarde.
Obrigado.
Obrigado, boa tarde a todos.
Obrigada.
Obrigada.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.